Welcome to the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and I am here to talk about everything hunting, hunting land, and the great outdoors in both Virginia and North Carolina. Thanks for tuning in. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Virginia Carolina Deer Tracts podcast. I'm Mike Davis, and today we have Mr. David Hennaman, the R3 coordinator with the Virginia Division of Wildlife Resources. Welcome, David.
How's it going, Mike?
And it's going good, going good. We're glad to have you. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to visit with us and tell us a little bit about the R3 program. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with the DWR and this program?
Sure. I grew up in Charles City County. We deer hunted. I was very fortunate. My whole family basically hunted everything. So my literal earliest memories are all involving hunting and trapping, specifically trapping. The first thing I ever remember as a kid was riding a pack basket with my dad while he was checking traps. And like I said, my whole family hunted. We're fortunate. We had a family farm where my uncles, my brothers, all my cousins, we all got to deer hunt, turkey hunt, duck hunt, trap, fish all together. So that's really where I got my start. You know, a lot of kids, they grow up sports kids or whatever, and we grew up hunting and fishing kids. So just on top of that, life takes you some crazy places. Spent some time in the Army on active duty. I ended up retiring from the Guard in November. I had 22 and a half years total service. But while I was in the Guard, started a law enforcement career and started out in general law enforcement. And one of the guys that we had that was an auxiliary deputy in the county I was working was a former game warden. And we got to be real close, just riding around, working together. And he said, man, you know, you ought to go to work for DWR. I was like, I'm not going to be a game warden. They hunt and fish all during hunting season. And he was like, yeah, but, you know, you're a state employee and 40 hours is 40 hours. So I applied back in 2013 and got picked up. And I was a game warden from 13 to 20. I was assigned to Hanover County. It was awesome. I ended my career as game warden. I was a dog handler assigned to Region 1. So I had a wildlife detection canine. Had the opportunity to go to work for the Fish and Wildlife Service as a special agent. I was a special agent assigned to West Virginia. And just getting older and looking downstream, I needed to be home more with my family. I'd been in law enforcement for about 15 years total, and it was just starting to wear on me. And I had the opportunity to come back to DWR in the education division as the R3 coordinator, and I jumped on that. My last assignment in the Guard, I was a senior infantry instructor at Virginia's Regional Training Institute. So I was teaching infantry tactics and procedures to new soldiers and soldiers that were changing their operational specialty. So I was already doing a lot of education stuff anyway. When I was a game warden and a special agent, I was a firearms instructor and taught a whole bunch of other stuff. So I really enjoy teaching anybody how to do something new, but specifically how to shoot and be comfortable in the woods. So it's kind of a natural progression for me, honestly. When I had the opportunity to come back and do something in education, I absolutely jumped on it. And, you know, the reason I went to work for DWR in the first place, Virginia's a great place to recreate outside, to hunt and fish and boat and hike and bird. We've got a really diverse, beautiful state, and I like for our public to be able to enjoy it and for people from other states to come and see what we have to offer. So this job has just been an excellent fit for me. I'm assigned out of headquarters, so the office is in Henrico. I live in Hanover, 15 minutes away. It's super convenient. It's been a great move for me. So that's a little bit about me and my background and where I came from and how I ended up where I'm at.
Wow, that's quite a story. First of all, thank you for your service. And I mean that in all capacities. I mean, law enforcement, DWR, and the Army and Guard. So, thank you for that. That's quite a full resume of service there. Um, but yeah, so that's really cool. Now that we understand how you got here, let's talk to the folks, especially the ones listening that don't know. Let's give them a broad overview of what the R3 program is, what it's all about.
So R3 stands for recruit, retain, and reactivate. And basically it's a philosophy instead of just a program. Um, so DWR has had a R3 coordinator since 2017. That's the history of it at the agency. But R3 as a philosophy really has been around since the 80s. So starting in the early 80s, hunting license sales nationwide started to decline. And there's a lot of, you know, speculation as to why that was and why it continues to decline. But I think initially, if you look at the socioeconomic distribution of the United States in the 80s, you had an awful lot of guys that were World War II veterans, 16 million of them, that basically you teach young men how to hunt, well, how to be comfortable in the woods, how to shoot weapons. And they have this big sense of community from serving in the armed forces. And then you bring them back. And if you look really historically at what the World War II veterans did, they came back and they started hunting clubs and biker gangs, So those guys were aging out in the early 80s, and there was just a overall decline in hunting license sales that we continue to see today. It's not as precipitous and doom and gloom as what a lot of cherry pick statistics can be perceived as, but there's definitely a decline in hunting and fishing. So in the 80s, agencies started looking at what's going on and what can we do to do things better and involve the public more. And that was really the genesis of R3. So then fast forward 25 years ish, and it was actual written down program that came out of the federal level where agencies were encouraged to take on R3 as a philosophy, and not just from the education divisions of individual agencies, but agency wide. So whether you're a biologist or a lands and access person or somebody that works at the front desk of the agency, when you look at your customers, which is really what hunters, anglers, boaters, wildlife viewers, utilizers of our public property, they're our customers. When you look at a customer, what can you do to either recruit, retain, or reactivate them into whatever their desired pastime is? So, I said in 2017, DWR hired a full-time R3 coordinator who was Eddie Herndon, and Eddie wrote our R3 plan, and he started a bunch of different things that some of them have fallen off and some of them are continuing today, whether they're in their same form or something different. But Eddie did a lot of good work to get us started on the right foot nationally, really. Virginia is sitting pretty good as far as the programs that we have available to the public and their relevancy. So when I came on, I really kind of looked at that as my job, since we already had a plan, which we'll rewrite the plan. We're coming up on 10 years. You need to evolve and designate things that worked and things that didn't and add and remove. So we're in the process of rewriting the plan, but really I look at my position as kind of a quality position to make sure that we're offering what the public is seeking, and B, that it's relevant training to the public, from a workshop standpoint, from hunter's ed, all the way through, really. So we're very fortunate, really. So in Virginia, I get to work with the main 5 pillars, which is wildlife viewing, shooting sports, hunting, fishing, and boating. So,
And that's pretty wild. I don't think
yeah,
a lot of people, I don't think really a lot of people are aware, maybe of the R3 program specifically. And most people, when they think of the DWR, they just think of game wardens and some of the negative stereotypes that come with that. So I find it very interesting when you're saying that, you're looking at the licensees basically as customers, and and what you just described is more or less a business model. So it's very interesting to hear it described that way. But when you think in terms of declining sales and stuff, I think you have to think of it that way. So I think it's kind of encouraging to see that it's being looked at that. I don't think a lot of people see government really function in that way. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air, really.
well, and the bottom line, I might be telling you something you already know, but wildlife conservation doesn't happen without hunter and angler dollars, and it's not just from license sales. It's PR money, which is Pittman Robertson, which is excise tax that's on the vast majority of anything you buy that is involved in hunting, fishing, and shooting. Every gun you buy, all the ammo, the clothing, the optics, the lures, rods and reels, even boats, some parts of boats to a certain extent. You're paying an excise tax that goes back directly into wildlife conservation. And DWR is a self-funded agency. We don't get general fund money. So
No,
the
I wasn't
only
aware of
way that
that.
we can, yeah, I mean, it's so way back, if we were the game commission, which all of the commissions functioned off of, they're self-funded. And that's continued all the way through. So DWR gets $0 from the general fund. We're self-funded. So we get our money through license sales, boat registrations. That's it. That's where we get our money, and PR money
I got you.
from the feds. So
Okay, well, interesting. Well, now that you've described, kind of given us an overview, why don't we take it R by R, so to speak, and just kind of dive into it a little bit. So the first R, uh, which you know you might argue is the most important R, is the recruitment. Because I know we spend a lot of time, a lot of my guests and several podcasts, there's a universal theme that we all recognize that, we got to get more youth involved. Um, but in this instance, I guess you're looking to get not just youth, but more people generally. But let's
right.
let's talk about that. What is that strategy, and what are some of the things that y'all are implementing to recruit people?
So recruiting, like you said, it can start at a very young age, or it can start older. So we have a healthy customer base when it comes to the recruit portion, because everybody that hunts in Virginia has to go through hunter's education, right? So you have to have it. When we went to the online model, we lose that touch point with a lot of people, but still it's there. So when somebody at the ground level, basically, if you Googled hunting in Virginia, it's going to start pointing you towards hunter's education classes. Hunter's education is a firearms safety course, essentially. It doesn't teach you how to hunt. It doesn't teach you tactics, techniques, where to find land, anything like that. So that's where we can bridge the gap can and do bridge the gap as an agency. We have a lot of beginner hunter workshops. We have a lot of workshops that are so everything from you've never hunted before, you have an interest in taking hunter's ed, and you want to just learn about hunting in general. We've got something for you, whether it's an in-person course or something that's web-based. A couple of years ago, we started doing a web-based series where people don't have to get up and go to Bass Pro or their local fire station or somewhere else. They can sit at home, go on a Zoom call, and learn something about hunting. And it's a series. So you've never hunted before and you just want to learn how we can help you start doing that. We also have a mentor program where you sign up for the mentorship program. as a mentee, and you get assigned a mentor who is an experienced hunter who will take you through that once you've already been through hunter's ed. And the workshop, if the workshop model isn't necessarily your, cup of tea, you can get that one-on-one interface with an experienced hunter, and they can take you from top to bottom. And we've got mentors in pretty much every discipline. So whether you want to learn how to turkey hunt or deer hunt or rabbit hunt or whatever, we've got somebody that we can pair you with that's going to be within probably an hour of you in the state.
That's great.
We've got more advanced workshops. So maybe you've deer hunted your whole life, but you've never hunted with a muzzleloader or a bow, and you want to learn about that. We partner with Virginia bow hunters. A lot of those guys are our hunter ed instructors, and they do advanced workshops on how to bow hunt or how to muzzleloader hunt or, whatever. So we've got the more advanced workshops, the beginner workshops. And then part of what I get to do a lot is work with some of our third-party partners. So some NGOs, other nonprofits that are operating in the hunting and fishing and boating and wildlife watching spheres. First Hunts, Delta Waterfowl, Ducks Unlimited, National Wild Turkey Federation, Turkeys for Tomorrow, NDA. I get to do a lot with those groups. If they want to do something, then we try as an agency to help them the best we can, whether it's putting them in touch with the right people in the right part of the state or trying to provide material support in the form of land use or something like that. Just trying to bridge that gap and give people the opportunity to get outside and pursue what they're passionate about. So that's the recruit part of it. And while you were talking about kids, I think it's great to get kids out in the outdoors, but kids without parental support, you're really going to have a very hard time making a hunter out of a one-time experience. Kids need to have parental support. The person that I love to see coming is somebody that's early 20s to late 40s that's got some discretionary time and money and a whole back seat full of kids. Because if I can get that mom or dad hooked on hunting or fishing, then it's going to become a family reflex. It's what they're going to do. It's where they're going to spend their time recreating. And that's really, that creates that family pattern of, when you've got a weekend and it's some free time. Oh, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to throw the rods in the truck and go down to the river and catch some fish. We're going to go deer hunt. We're going to buy some rabbit dogs and start training, that family unit. And I don't know if you have kids or not, but I've got kids, and I'm a son also to my dad, who's very passionate about hunting and fishing. And it's like having a gym buddy, right? You might not really feel like getting up. It's bad weather, whatever, but your dad's counting on you. Your kids are counting on you. So you're going to get up and you're going to go and you're going to make that effort no matter what. And it's having that accountability of having a partner.
Yeah.
And, I think the vast majority of the most memorable hunts I ever had are not around a harvest. It's around the fellowship that occurred before, during, and after the hunt.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the critical part for connecting people to other people in the hunting and fishing community. So they have that actual sense of community, and you can create those memories together. I killed a really big deer a couple years ago and I was by myself. It's like, so what?
Yeah. It's just not the same.
First thing, I got loaded up all by myself.
Yeah.
There's nobody, I FaceTime my brother, but and then the first thing I did, I field dressed it, loaded it up into the truck, and took it to my dad's house. So that's part of it. Being being wildly successful means less to me than not being successful and having a good time chopping it up with my buddies, you know?
Yeah, no, I
So,
agree. I think, I think you said a couple things that make a lot of sense there. Going back to the youth, I hadn't really thought about it that way, but you're exactly right. If there's no parental support at home, when that weekend comes and it's time to go hunting and the kid wants to go hunt, but the parent's not into it, or they're doing other things, then everything you've done to gain that kid's interest is going to fall off.
yeah,
Um, I think, yeah, I hadn't really thought about it that way, so that makes a lot of sense. At one time, I very much matched the description that you brought in earlier. I wasn't a hunter as a kid. We were not anti-hunters. We were just busy into sports, and just that just wasn't our thing. So I think the term is a late onset hunter or something like that. I've
yeah,
heard somebody say. I kind of fell into that category, but yeah, I took the hunter education course with my son. We took it together. So and that has worked out. I'm still very much into it. I'm probably into it more than he is still, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you put it in perspective like that. And I also agree with what you described. I'll call it the hunting camp. That is uh, that is just where all that fellowship and that camaraderie and sharing the stories and sharing those experiences that other hunters are typically the only people that can understand what you see and what you hear and what you feel in that environment, and it's a lot of um gosh, what's the word I'm looking I can't even think. It's just it's very special. It carries a lot of weight and a lot of meaning.
yeah,
So I agree with you. When you're by yourself, I mean, it's great to have that success, but if you don't have anybody to share it with, it's kind of anticlimactic a little bit. So
yeah.
I agree with you there. So, since you're speaking about, I guess that kind of leads into the retain part since we were talking about parental involvement. So what kind of things are you doing to retain people that are, both new in it and, spend a lifetime doing it?
So the retention part programmatically, we do have continuing education events. So, if you're interested in learning how to pick up a different outdoor skill, um, like I said, I use the example of the deer hunting. If you've only ever hunted with a centerfire rifle and you want to get into muzzleloader hunting or get into bow hunting or learn how to waterfowl hunt, we have those continuing education events. And then, I mean, really, it's that the retention part starts to really get into the wildlife management aspect of things, right? So, as a agency, we're tasked with managing Virginia's wildlife, to the ecological capacity and the cultural carrying capacity, all those different things. So that gets into more like the wildlife management realm, and that's a little bit less. I mean, I don't have anything to do with wildlife management particularly. Um, so that's when you see the biologists start flipping switches as far as this county is going to have increased doe days, this county's decreased doe days, stuff like that. But from my side, um, some of the like regulation simplification stuff, our regulations are pretty complex when you get right down to it. We're not the worst state out there, but we've got some pretty complex regulations. We've had some subcommittees that are working at simplifying our regs to the extent that's possible and still meet the um, legal and biological goals that the regulation is there for in the first place. So that's the retain portion, and a lot of the retention stuff. Our we have public comment sections or periods for every new regulation, and then all of our plans are updated every so many years, and those are public comments. So we get to hear directly from the hunters, anglers, boaters, wildlife viewers even about what we're doing and what they would like to see done. And there are comments that result in regulation change, you know. So, but that's the retain portion of it. Really is just continuing education, and that goes into our public and what they want to see, you
Yeah.
know. So we do some YouTube videos, and then we also do a lot of in-person advanced trainings throughout. We have a advanced skills weekend at Holiday Lake, which happens every September, and you can really go there and learn how to do anything. And we've seen families participate in those, and they take it as like a series. You know, you'll see a family together up there doing a small game workshop one year, and then they come back the next and they're doing waterfowl or something else, you know,
Yeah.
and they take it on as a group and go. So
Well, those sound like some amazing events. Um, what do you see as the biggest or some of the biggest challenges as you do the recruitment and retainment thing? What kind of obstacles or roadblocks are you running into?
so recruitment with our younger generation, um, firearms are just viewed very negatively overall by people that didn't grow up around them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think from that standpoint, that's the biggest hurdle right off the bat is if they're not from a hunting or shooting sports family and the family isn't really familiar with firearms or has them in the house, you know, straight off the bat, you're going to have to introduce them to something that they probably have a somewhat negative view of and that is really very intimidating, you know. Specifically hunting, everything everything that's involved with hunting is kind of dangerous, right?
Yeah.
From
That's right.
the time you leave the truck, being you know, you have to be able to navigate in the wilderness, even if you're hunting semi-urban areas. You know, you can get lost, so you got to be able to be outside and maybe cold and maybe wet, and then you know that's inherently uncomfortable. And then firearms are dangerous, tree stands are dangerous. You can cut yourself and bleed to death. You know, it's all kinds of terrible
Well,
stuff
when you
that,
put it like
uh,
that, I mean, of course.
yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
terrifying. But you know, to tell a parent that their child's getting ready to or is really interested in this activity that has all these danger points in it, you that's a big hurdle.
Yeah.
Um, really.
Yeah.
So that's why it's super important for us, and I think we do a pretty good job as an agency in workshops and in hunters ed to put parents at ease and put kids at ease doing the things, you know, introducing them to these concepts, so they realize it's really, while it is dangerous, there's a whole lot of things that we do to mitigate those dangers.
Yeah.
So that, and then access. Good private land is, and I'm from the greater Richmond area. So, like I said, I live in Hanover, but I grew up in Charles City, which is very rural. Good private land's hard to find, you know. Uh, our public land, it's some very quality pieces of public land in Virginia, but a lot of it's not easily accessed. You know, it's you got to be willing to get out and get rugged, um, and go jump through some hoops in some of these places to be able to access the good areas. But I mean, I say that, and there's also some very good areas that are pretty low hanging fruit. They're easy to get to. They've got great access, and you can have a reasonable expectation of success out there, depending on which game species you're trying to chase. But access is definitely one of them. Even with the advent of private business models where they essentially VBRO hunting land. Um, with a lot of those places, you don't know who was in there before you, what happened the day before. You can go
Right.
scout and everything looks great. And the day before you were in there, somebody killed 4 or 5 deer, which is, it's a public land model. Also, you're just kind
Right.
of paying for it, you know?
Yeah, that's right.
So access is a hurdle for a lot of people, especially if you're from an urban or suburban area and you don't have family that's got land somewhere close. Same thing. It's pretty daunting. And if you're not comfortable being outside in the middle of the wilderness in the dark, it's even more daunting.
Yeah,
So
very true.
um, just everything kind of being a late onset hunter, I think you'll understand. Me growing up hunting, a lot of the things that we just grew up doing, I took for granted when I first came into this job.
Sure.
Um, so when you're starting to talk to brand new hunters or people who literally have never spent any time in the woods, you really got to pump the brakes on the things that you're talking about. We had a new hunters workshop, and we were doing it on this Boy Scout camp, and we were talking about deer trails. Well, we were on one of the Boy Scout trails, so it was, you know, a gravel path with defined edges and everything. And one of the participants was like, "Is this a deer trail?" And that was a kind of aha moment for me.
Yeah.
We had to really pump it back and go and find a well-established deer trail and say, this is a deer trail. See the tracks, all that, you know, and really just it takes us. It took me a while to change my way of thinking because it was so much stuff that I had just taken for granted throughout my life experience. You know, just being in the woods, it can be intimidating. Being in the woods at dark can be intimidating. Using firearms is very intimidating. So those things, and trying to make sure that when we're doing beginning workshops, we're catering to the very, very basic beginner and not getting too high level.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense. When you've been doing it your whole life, each year it's like you're advancing another level. So you're on level 20 or 30 and you're speaking the jargon and referencing all these things that, like you said, people don't know what you're talking about.
yeah,
And yeah, I can see that. That can be very intimidating, very overwhelming, and almost be counterproductive. So that's good that you recognize that and you're like, well, let's back it up a little bit and let's start at square one and build you up a couple levels there so you can join in on the fun.
absolutely.
Yeah. So then what does the reactivate side of things look like?
So we have, and people that don't hunt and fish as a primary source of recreation, there's kind of like this rise and fall of license purchases. The average person that doesn't hunt and fish primarily for recreation is going to buy a license once every 3 to 5 years. So they're going to something. There's going to be a triggering event. They're going to have some extra time, some extra money, something like that, and they're going to say, okay, well, I'm going to buy my license. I'm going to hunt this year. Or they go to somebody's house. They have some deer that was prepared a certain way, some ducks, something like that. That it kicks in, or they've got a child or a grandchild that decides that they want to start doing it. So that's kind of the curve, the rise and fall of that, for lack of better a better description. I'll say a non-hardcore outdoors person, just kind of recreational, you know. So the reactivate part of that is just trying to get those people to cause that trigger memory, whether it's through some programming that we offer, or social media outreach, or email campaigns where, you know, we've got all your information, we know who you are, we know where you live, we know what your email is, and hitting you with that email with maybe the summary from last year's deer harvest, or the acorn report coming up from this year, or something to try to kick that cycle
Right.
going, to where they purchase another license, they get back into the outdoors. Because ultimately, those again, they're just like the parents of the kids. They are the parents of the kids. We want them to be outside, contributing to conservation, and making those memories with their children, their grandchildren, their friends, um, to continue to be out there.
Yeah, I got you. Now, there was something I was reading about kind of I don't even know how to phrase this, but you had like the five pillars. You had the hunting, the fishing, the boating, and uh, recreational
Watching
shooting and
wildlife,
wildlife.
sports.
And
Yep.
and and I think there were some efforts to kind of take some of the existing folks that were into one or two of the things and kind of expand their interest into the other areas. So tell me
Yep.
a little bit about that.
So we call a lot of people that don't actively hunt or fish hunter or angler adjacent. They do something that is making them comfortable in the outdoors anyway. They're utilizing wild lands, whether you're a mountain bike rider or just hike or trail run or camp. Um, you're out there anyway. So if you're already out there and you're already enjoying the wilderness and wildlife, why not try the consumptive side of it? Catch a fish. You don't have to keep it, but give fishing a try. Um, Small game hunting, give small game hunting a try. We do the same thing with their anglers because they're already part of the public. They're interacting with the agency. They're utilizing our boat ramps. They're going to our fishing ponds. They know where the WMAs are at. Well, a small game license and a 22 rifle or a 410 shotgun are not that far out of the realm of attainability. You know, if you enjoy fishing, give small game hunting a try.
Yeah.
If you like to camp, you're already on one of our state parks. We have angling programs in pretty much every state park in the Commonwealth. Go to one of the angling programs. If the kids are running wild in the camper over the weekend, take them to an angling program. Let them get outside, let them fish, give that a try. So it's just engaging with those hunter and angler adjacent populations that are already comfortable in the outdoors and are utilizing those spaces already. Just try something new.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if they have an interest in one of those things, like you said, they are already an outdoor enthusiast in some capacity. So it's just
Yep.
really just expanding that capacity for something they already have the passion for. So
Yep.
yeah, I got you. I got you. Well, with all that being said, it sounds like it, well, how do you measure success on a program like this? How do you gauge whether it's working? How do you gauge that?
So there's a couple different ways where you can gauge success. In Virginia, if you just straight look at license sales numbers, that's not really a hugely accurate metric of how many people we actually have in the state that are hunters and anglers because we have so many exemptions specifically when it comes to hunting. You can be exempt as a landowner, as a child of a landowner, as the grandchild of a landowner, as the spouse of any of those categories. um, there's some other exemptions, or a lot of other exemptions really, but so participation, so overall participation, so if you start looking at your harvest numbers, we can see individual customer number accounts, and see if that's holding true or not. So really, it's and we have a whole human dimensions team. We Mallory White is our human dimensions specialist, and she is a heck of a lot smarter than I am and really, really, really into the numbers. But overall participation, we can kind of judge it from our harvest metrics. And then on just an individual level, so some of the participants that we had in some really early, when I first came back to the agency in the education division, um, some really early workshops we did that were ground level workshops we followed those people through their license history and were able to see they went to a workshop, they purchased a license the next year, they purchased a license the year after that, they harvested a deer the year, the next
Yeah.
year. So we were able to track that success, and that's on a micro level because you're really just following one person. But you can see that success, and that's something that we I would love to be able to see our data collection be at a level where you could follow somebody from the beginning, through their customer number and their customer profile, follow them from beginning to end to see what's the magic number. We got this person to go to Hunter's Ed, and then they purchased a license, and then they went to a workshop, and then they fell off for 2 years, but they came back to another workshop. It'd be really interesting to be able to get that far into the weeds. But as far as just overall success, we can look at our harvest metrics and kind of extrapolate how many hunters, because we know typically what one person harvests per year when it comes specifically to deer. We know what the average hunter harvests, and we can look at it through that and see where we're at. So.
Okay. Do you see that the programs that you offer, have they grown in size and number in terms of like, like the number of classes? Like, okay, the first year we did it, we held 10 classes statewide. Now we're up to 50, or that kind of thing.
Yeah. So Jimmy Moots is our statewide Hunter's Ed coordinator, and I was in a board meeting where he gave an update earlier this year, and we conducted 3 times as many workshops in 2024 than we did in 2023,
Oh,
and
wow.
the overall census for those workshops was higher. So if we were having a deer hunting workshop previously, and a lot of that's engagement with us as well. We had some staff changes, and we got different people in different places that come in and try new things. So our overall census in those classes was higher. Not only did we do 3 times more workshops, we had more people in each workshop than we did previously.
Man,
So, and
and
we're
that's a 1 year
2025.
turnaround.
Yep.
That's impressive.
2025, we're rocking too.
That's
Well,
great.
it was a lot of things that went on. We were coming out of COVID. Still in 2023, there was a lot of stuff that was hangover from COVID, 2022, 2023. And then during COVID, there was the surge of outdoor activity overall. We laughed and joked and called it the camo quarantine because, people were utilizing the wild spaces. They couldn't go anywhere else. So
Right.
they're
Yeah.
going to go fishing. They're going to go hunting. We had a record turkey harvest that year just because it was right at the very beginning of COVID. And I think everybody who had ever plucked a yelper, hit the woods, and they were out there chasing them.
Yeah. That makes a
So,
lot of sense. Yeah.
and a lot of those people have stayed, a lot of the COVID participants, the people that we picked up as outdoors people or that reactivated during COVID have stayed on. And I think some of the surge in 24 as far as education, one was the opportunities that we were providing, and two, it was some of those that had either gotten into it from the first time or were getting back into it, and it was their first opportunity to continue their outdoor education. So, but 25, we've been rocking and rolling as well. We got a whole bunch of stuff going on and tons of workshops. And we're doing strong work. So,
Man, that's great. That's very encouraging to hear. I think it's not only great, but I think it's really important, everything that y'all are doing. As a, outdoor enthusiast myself, the thought of it going away, just or declining generation by generation, it's just a terrifying thought.
yeah.
So, You guys are probably kind of a thankless job doing a lot of behind the scenes stuff. Uh, but it's encouraging to hear, well, number one, that you're doing it, and it's encouraging to hear that it's growing and you're having some success at it.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned earlier, you talked a little bit about some of the nonprofits and NGOs and stuff like that you work with. Just curious a little bit about, I guess, how does that work? How do you go about working with those partnerships and developing those partnerships?
So they add capacity for me. I'm a one man shop. I'm one person in a big commonwealth, and I try to touch where I can, but specifically, so we do some hunts with Delta Waterfowl and Ducks Unlimited. We have a huge youth waterfowl hunt that's here in the greater Richmond area with Ducks Unlimited. They partner with Moncune Creek Outfitters. It's the one of the largest youth waterfowl hunts on the East Coast. Usually they have around 150 kids
Wow.
that are there with their parents and a mentor that show up and do it. And that's through a partnership with a private entity and Ducks Unlimited. That same entity does a giant youth turkey work or youth turkey hunt. So that's big. That's through Green Top and Bass Pro and our Wildlife Foundation grant. They do a giant turkey hunt. It's about 120 kids. Same thing. I mean, it's really, really cool to get out there. That's one of those ones where you see it and it's like, yeah, making the kids memories is very much worth it because you see those little kids out there, the 5 and 6 year olds that have harvested a turkey for the first time, and they're the bird weighs more than them and is twice as big. Um, so so that's one of the things where they just add capacity.
Yeah.
NDA. I worked with the Virginia Tech chapter of NDA doing some stuff, and they were trying to do a lot of mentored hunting with their members. So they would take non-hunters out with their members. And really, all I had to do with them, it was just a touch point. They needed somebody back at the agency that they could talk to. And we would talk to their chapter and provide some handouts and stuff and educational materials for them to give to their mentees. Um, First Hunts Foundation is organization that's all throughout Virginia, and they offer mentor hunting opportunities. So a lot of that is the same thing. It's just touch points and connections, putting them in touch with the right people. So if they need raffle items for something, I can give somebody a call and get them set up with that. Or if they need a place to conduct a hunt, we've gone out and done that with them too. So really, it's building capacity, and some of those organizations have in reach into communities that are either geographically isolated from me, since I am in Richmond. They're in Southwest or the far western part of the state. They can do things in places that would take me 12 hours of driving, but we have somebody out there from First Hunts that can put on a hunt or take on a mentor or something like that. And then, so there's also a First Hunts chapter in Hampton Roads that basically started in a women's shooting club. And one of them decided that she was interested in learning how to hunt, and she contacted First Hunts and they put her in touch with a mentor, and we did some turkey stuff in conjunction with them. Did turkey hunt. It was super productive. They've all continued. The ladies that we were able to reach through that are continuing to hunt. Some of them are waterfowling. They're all still turkey hunting, and they're shooting every Wednesday evening at the range. So they're those NGOs and nonprofits and even for profits to a certain extent. Some of them are just capacity builders for me in this part of it. We work really closely. We're very fortunate in the Richmond area. We have Green Top, Bass Pro, and Dance's Sporting Goods. And all three of those are huge supporters of the agency and the outdoors and the outdoor public in general. So, that's my plug for them for being so kind and supportive to us in our programming. Um, so
No, that's
it's
that's
just
great. I mean, that's just even more encouragement that you have the I don't know, private agencies or whatever you want to call them out there that have very much aligned core values, and they are not only given perhaps the financial support, but the personnel support ever, like you said, to just to be those extra boots on the ground to help spread um, this outdoors thing that we all love and are passionate about. So that's very encouraging that these things are going on. Um, look into the future. What do you see like 5 to 10 years from now? Do you project anything out there, whether it be new things coming along or some obstacles on the horizon that you see, some potential threats? What do you see out there that we need to keep an eye on?
so specifically talking about deer hunting. CWD in Virginia is not going away. It's here. And that's going to continue to change the deer hunting landscape of Virginia. You know, um, in a perfect world, someone would come up with a rapid field test that can tell people whether or not the deer is CWD positive, because although there's no threat to human consumption, the vast majority of people that we talk to are hesitant to eat CWD positive deer. And if you've got it's really inconvenient now to have your deer tested, because it's got to be sent away, and then you have to wait a period of time, and that meat has to stay in your freezer, and then it's going to come back positive or negative. So CWD is a hurdle to deer hunting. A rapid field test would make that exponentially easier. Um, as far as bear hunting goes, mange is an issue in parts of the state, and the agency is reacting to mange in the way they see appropriate and trying to mitigate the spread and restore the populations to where our hunters would like to see the bear populations at. Um, Waterfowl wise, they're ducks, man. They nest in the Arctic Circle and they migrate to Mexico. So it's all about water and winter. So yeah, that is what it is. One thing, it's so non-toxic shot. Bismuth and tungsten have become in vogue in the last couple of years. Saw it's a company that had really started up and was producing shells specifically because of bismuth, which was Boss, and they're not producing bismuth anymore because of supply chains and tariffs. So they're going back to a copper coated steel shot. So just fluctuations within the hunting and shooting industries. It was a portion months ago where there was a pretty much worldwide powder shortage. So a lot of ammunition manufacturers and distributors were worried about what that was going to do, and the industry reacted and ramped up production, and we really didn't see those prices. The anticipated price spike in ammunition didn't happen. So that's that. And then there's politics. In Virginia, we're coming up on an election, and we'll just see what shakes out. Recently, if you look news wise, firearms have not been portrayed as negatively as they have historically been portrayed. So it's a little easier on ramp for us to try to introduce people to firearms when it's not a scary death machine. It's easier to introduce somebody to it.
Yeah, makes sense.
So it's a lot of economic and cultural exterior influences that can impact our ability to recruit, retain, and reactivate hunters.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, I got you. That makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of like trying to nail Jello to a tree. All those different
right.
moving pieces that are, you can't predict which way they're going to ebb and flow. You just kind of have to anticipate the best you can and react the best you can to stay out front of it. Yeah, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense.
But on the flip side of that, the good news is, so we do live in Virginia, and we have awesome deer hunting. We've got great turkey hunting. Our waterfowl hunting can be epic with the right conditions. Small game hunting is amazing. Um, our angling, you can catch brook trout, you can catch native brook trout, or you can come to the bay, you can catch giant cobia and red drum. We've got some of the best fisheries on the East Coast. Well, one of the it's so we're living in a great spot for
Yeah, we
outdoor.
are. 100% agree with that. We
Yep.
do. Virginia's got a full spectrum of outdoor species and activities. It really does. We're very
Yep.
blessed. We're very blessed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how can people, I guess, if they want to find out more about this, or if they want to get involved, what's the best way to start in that direction?
So we have a ton of volunteer opportunities. If you go to the website, and whether you're interested in hunting, fishing, boating, habitat enhancement, whatever, we have volunteer opportunities for you there. And that's what, if you're a diehard hunter or angler, I would encourage you, specifically hunters, to reach out to the agency, become a hunter's ed volunteer or a mentor for the hunting program, and really pass that on,
Yeah.
um, pass that
Now,
knowledge, that
would
passion on.
would this be just on the main DWR website, or is there a different R3 type website they need to go to?
Nope, everything is underneath the main DWR website.
Okay.
So,
Well, cool. I'll be sure to include a link to that on all of our social media posts, with the podcast and everything. So people can just, once they get inspired, hearing you talk, they can just click the link and get right to it.
yeah, yep. And I would, like I said, if you're a diehard hunter angler, wildlife watcher, just passionate about habitat, you want to learn something new, I would encourage you to volunteer with the agency in some capacity. And we have activities for you. We've got an amazing volunteer coordinator. Her name's Kristen Mullins. She herds cats from one end of the state to the other and keeps people on track and gets them where they need to go. She
Yeah,
does a fabulous job at it. So
outstanding.
um, she had never hunted before, and we went. I took her spring turkey hunting this year, and she was able to harvest her first turkey. It was pretty epic. It was an absolute giant bird.
Oh man,
Um, so we had a good time, and that's what it's ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that's what it's all about for us as outdoorsmen, is to pass that on. Um, my granddad, and I've seen it written there. I thought he came up with it, but he obviously didn't. He said that hunters evolve through three stages in their life. When they first start, they've just got kind of like a bloodlust, and they want to kill as many of whatever they're pursuing,
yeah,
whether it's ducks or bears or whatever. They just want to rack up some body count, and then
yeah,
they evolve into the trophy aspect of it, and they want to kill a nice one or a pretty duck or whatever. And then once they've satisfied that portion, they want to pass it on and teach somebody else how to do what they know how to do. And that's it's it's why I'm here. I want hunting, fishing, I want the outdoors in its current form to be available to my children and my grandchildren. And sometimes you got to talk with your butt and not with your mouth, and put some skin in the game. And that's really why I'm here. So,
yeah. No, I couldn't agree more. And you know, a recent, I guess, hot topic, which has really nothing to do with R3, but it has to do with the outdoors. There was all that talk about selling off public lands. And it's one of the few times in the past few years that I've seen the entire hunting community be united in one front. We're so busy arguing amongst ourselves about silly things, but we were all in agreement that we didn't want to lose public lands. And
Yeah.
the reason I bring that up is, you know, twofold. One, Virginia has a lot of public land, like you mentioned earlier, and the thought of losing that would be absolutely devastating. And that passion and that fire that I think a lot of people kind of felt at the thought of losing that, that's exactly the kind of energy that we as outdoorsmen just need to be pouring back into the industry, back into things like this R3 program to make sure that for generations to come that the land is there for us to use, and that people know how to use it and how to enjoy it and just pass it on like you said. So
And that it is available. And, so the counter movement to R3 is the hunt quietly movement. And there's you can Google it, but hunt quietly, basically, they don't want any more hunters or anglers. They think that private or public lands are overcrowded as it is. They don't want to see more people out there utilizing them, whether it's hunters, anglers, bird watchers, whatever. They think public lands are full. We don't put a closed sign on it, and only the people that have been using it are the only ones that get to keep using it. We don't want to introduce anybody else. We just want to be here and have our own little thing. Well, it's a very selfish viewpoint, A. And B, when you talk about a groundswell of support, those same people that are saying hunt quietly were the loudest on Instagram and Facebook about don't sell my public lands. Well, they can't, if it's only 6 of you raising a whole bunch of noise, no legislator is going to listen to that.
that's right.
But when there's 16 million of you, when one senator, their phone rings 24/7 and everybody is saying this is the worst idea ever, we can't believe you ever introduced this, it makes a difference. And it's all about numbers. And while it may be inconvenient that you go to your favorite WMA and there's 14 cars in the parking lot, you shouldn't look at it as 14 cars that are competition. You should look at that as 14 other members of the greater outdoor community. You know, um, we're all in this together. If you like to hunt and fish, it's something that's, it's a privilege. It's even in Virginia, it's a right in our constitution, but at the end of the day, it's a privilege. We're privileged to be able to get outside and do the things that we're passionate about, and introducing new people to those. You're just building your community, instead of being an island and trying to hunt quietly.
Yeah. And I would suggest to those people, I mean, look, in an ideal world, we'd all love to have 200 acres that we're the only person that's ever setting foot in there. But the reality, I mean, that's just an unrealistic expectation. Um,
Right.
the only way that you're ever going to be able to do that is if you buy your own 200 acres. And
You
for
buy it. Yeah.
and for those people, I just happen to sell land, so give me a call. I'll help you with that, and we can solve your public land dilemma. But for the rest of the world, it is what it is. If public land is your only means to do it, then you just got to learn to share. I mean,
Yep.
that's the way it works.
Yep.
So, but that's interesting. I'd never heard of the hunt quietly. I've never heard of that before. I'm
Yeah.
almost afraid to Google it. I don't want to go down that. Uh, but listen,
It's some
David, I think we've covered everything I really wanted to talk about. I don't know if there's anything that you feel pressing that you want to get into before we wrap this up.
Well, I would again encourage people that are interested in the department, that have a passion for hunting, fishing, boating, watchable wildlife, shooting sports, to look at what the department has to offer, look at what some of the NGOs and nonprofits in your area have to offer, and pass that passion on to somebody else who hasn't had the benefit of a mentor or family member or a good friend to bring them along with them. Be that mentor, family member, friend, and bring somebody along with you.
Yeah, I think that's a great call to action. Everybody listening out there, take David's words to heart. It's all up to us. It's going to be what we make of it, and if we want to see the outdoors thrive, and then it's up to us to spread the word and to spread that passion to other folks. So I encourage you to get involved as David has suggested, and I'll put the links on there again. Man, I think that's pretty neat. I've learned a lot today, David. And again, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to get on with me today and kind of help share this information with the world.
It's my pleasure, Mike. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I guess that's all I got, folks. We'll see you next time. And be sure to go on the DWR website and look for those volunteer opportunities. Thanks again, David.
See you.